right, hey you guys, and welcome back to Air Combat USA Flying Fighters. My name is Mike Rocket Blackstone. I'm happy to have you guys back here to show you one more cool thing that I've been able to be a part of and learn over the last about 34 years or so, and it's flying formation. And here's something you get to do when you fly with us at Air Combat for one of our dogfighting scenarios. It is the process of flying two airplanes in relative close proximity to each other in formation. This is something that you probably have seen in a lot of movies. You've seen it in the movie Top Gun, the planes flying together. This is a critical part to becoming a fighter pilot, and it's a great skill to have even if you are not a fighter pilot. So I'm going to talk about it with you today so you can kind of appreciate some of its benefits and some of its challenges. First thing that we'd like to talk about is the way we get the airplanes on to take off together is we have to establish a lead and a wingman. So the lead is the number 1 aircraft and the wingman is the number 2 aircraft. We call them Dash 2. Now the leader is usually the more senior pilot of the group and the more responsible and the guy with the most experience. And his job or her job is to take care of the flight and to give both aircraft, they're going to be treated as one. So the lead aircraft will be working the radio as well as the navigation, and taking care of the wingman is their job. First and foremost is to take care of themselves and the wingman simultaneously. They treat them as one unit. So the two airplanes taxi out together, and they move into position on the runway together. And I'll talk you through what a formation takeoff looks like in the Marchetti SF-260s. So the two airplanes will make sure everything's set in the run-up area before they go. So the canopies are closed and locked, the boost pump is on, and when they get cleared onto the runway for takeoff, both of them then will turn on their landing lights. The lead aircraft will look over at his wingman to make sure that his airplane's configured properly, giving him a thumbs up, and also looking over to make sure he's ready. He'll give him a head nod, and then he'll give him the spool 'em up signal from his cockpit and to his right. Okay, in this case, he'll give him the spool up symbol that we're running the engines up. They both run their engines up to approximately 1700 RPM, and the mixtures are rich, the props are forward, and the landing lights are on, and he will give him a arm down like this, that we are beginning the takeoff roll and releasing the brakes. So both the airplanes will release the brakes, the powers will come up. Now the lead aircraft will not go wide open on the throttle. He's going to go up to about 24 inches of manifold pressure, giving the wingman several inches of manifold pressure of power, of difference of power, of additional power to stay in position in formation as they both accelerate down the runway together. Now the lead aircraft, his job is to stay on his side of the runway, so he'll be well left of the center line. The wingman's job is to stay on their side of the runway, and they'll both accelerate to flying speed. Once they start to reach flying speed, the leader usually may give him a "we're about to lift off." As the airplanes gently lift into the air, he will lower the nose and accelerate once they get airborne, and then the leader will give him the "we're cranking the gear up" symbol with a head nod. And as he raises the handle, his head will come up. Both gear handles will come up at the same time so the airplanes can reduce drag together. As they continue to accelerate, once they reach 100 knots, they raise the flaps. And this is the flap is about to come up. Then he reaches for the handle. Head nod again as he raises the flaps, and both airplanes will clean up and be cleaned together as the wingman moves into a tighter parade formation all the way out to our practice area. This is a normal position for a wingman to be. And where we like to see our wingman is step down and to the right. So in other words, about 10 or 15 feet on a lower altitude than the leader, and to the right enough to be on a 45-degree bearing line. And what that means is if you were to take a line off of the nose of this aircraft up front and put it on a 45-degree line, that would be in position with the eyeballs of the Dash 2, okay? So this 45-degree line is really important to maintain so that you don't get too far back. We call this sucked, and too wide so that it starts to look like your line abreast. So there's this beautiful 45-degree line that we're trying for, and staying stepped down enough to see the wheels in the wheel well of the lead aircraft is a good position to be. Another visual cue is to see the nose line up with the flap actuator halfway point on the wing, in other words, from underneath. So you'll see the nose line up with that halfway point on the leader's aircraft, right on into the Dash 2's position. Now, how do we maintain this position? The whole point of it is to stop the relative motion between the aircraft. So if the leader starts to gently move to the right, and of course he'll do it as smoothly as possible, he'll start to gently put a little bit of right stick in. The wingman's job is to match that bank angle and stay in that constant relative position no matter what happens, and to stop the relative motion. So here's what would happen if he didn't do anything. The leader would turn and he'd begin to move across the windscreen of the Dash 2's airplane, and he'd be instantly out of position, okay? So it's the wingman's number one priority to maintain his position by stopping the relative motion and never looking away from the leader's aircraft, ever, right? So he's focused on that and maintaining that position with up, down, left, and right on the stick in order to match the wing lines with each other so that both airplanes stay in constant position throughout. Now, another thing that's happening is as we turn into each other like this, Dash 2 here needs to make a slight power reduction because the leader is now cutting you off, right? So as he starts to turn in, you're on the inside of the turn here, you're flying a smaller radius, a slight power reduction needs to occur in order to maintain that position until the leader rolls out again, and then the power is reintroduced again to stay in position. Contrary, if the leader turns away from you, you maintain your position, so the wings are changing angle again. You keep that 45-degree bearing line constant, and you're now on the outside of the turn, so now you push the throttle up in order to stay in position, okay? This happens for the entire time that you're in formation. So that's how we do the formation. We call this parade. Once we get out towards the practice area, they separate into what we call combat spread, and now you're into more of a fighting wing style formation. Now both airplanes are free to look for bad guys. This is much more effective to be in a two-ship dogfighting regime. Two airplanes can provide mutual support for each other. I can look for bad guys on your tail. You can look for bad guys on mine. We can both use our other senses in order to help support the other aircraft. Planes are much more effective flying in a flight of two like this. So that's the first piece. So lead, his job, take care of the wingman. Wingman's job, take care of the lead, and the leader is going to constantly be looking out for the wingman, and the wingman's job is to maintain visual contact and his position on the leader at all times. That's the contract, okay? Now, what about joining up? So let's say we broke away from each other and we got really far apart, and you go, okay, I'd really like to join up on this guy. Leader would say, okay, you're clear to join on my right side. He'll put it into a turn, allowing for Dash 2 to do what we talked about before, which is basically a lead pursuit turn. And if he wants to expedite things, he'll do a low yo-yo. He'll come screaming in here, high speed, descending in and below the lead aircraft. As he gets in tighter, he'll start making a power reduction. He'll put a little bit of G on to slow down. And as he decides whether or not he's got the closure under control, he will reintroduce the throttle as things need to continue to accelerate back into position. And once he gets everything lined up again, he'll be back into position with the leader in a frozen position on his canopy at a 45-degree bearing, just like that, okay? So nose down inside of the turn is the rendezvous. Reduce your power, bring your nose up. If you are overshooting and it's going badly and you have too much closure, you can always go to the outside and float outside of the turn momentarily till you get things under control, maybe even join up there and then transition back into your normal spot on the right. But the best way to do it is like we initially talked about, which is just slide in with the rendezvous, pull into position, and be locked onto the wing. All right, now when we come back to the airport, this is what the overhead break looks like. The two airplanes are overhead the field at 700 feet above the runway. They are at 190 knots. When we get to the field, in this case it's going to be a left brake. When we get to the field, the leader will give a 3-second signal that this is going to be a 3-second break, which means I want you to do 3 seconds of space between me and your break. So when I break, you're going to count to 3 and then break, okay? And then he's going to give the signal that we're going to make a 360 break, and then he will give the kiss off signal, which means I am out of here. So the lead airplane puts the plane into a 60-degree bank turn, pulls back on the stick to slow down and bleed the speed off. 3 seconds later, dash 2, he begins his 60-degree bank turn, reducing his power and slowing down. And the two airplanes are now about 30 seconds in trail of each other, so that the lead airplane will be touching down just about 30 seconds ahead of dash 2. During that turn, the goal is to go from 190 knots down to about 120 knots, and pulling G's is how we do that. With the power back, the plane is going to bleed down to 120, and at that point, the G's come off, relax the back pressure, now you're downwind. And what we're going to do at this point is drop the flaps. So 120, flaps 20, continue to decelerate to about 105 knots, gear down, then the rest of the flaps are introduced to flaps 40, and the nose comes down. And the airplane begins to set up for its landing. Dash 2 is in trail. Now, which side of the runway should we land on? If the wind is from the left, the airplane that is on the downwind side is where the first airplane will land. So dash 1 will land on the right side, so that his wake is going to be trajected across the runway to the edge of the runway to the right, and dash 2 will land on the left side of the runway. And they're, of course, going to be separated with about 30 seconds separation. So they touch down, roll out. Once everything's under control, lead will move into the left side and then exit, and dash 2 will follow. So that is what an air combat formation flight looks like. We hope you enjoyed, I hope you enjoyed this session, and I look forward to seeing you again on another session here at Flying Fighters with me, Mike Rocket Blackstone. Please like it if you liked it, subscribe if you'd like to see the next episode, and leave any questions in the comments below. We'll see you in the next session.